How's it going, everybody? For today's flint knapping tutorial, I'm going to show you how to do aboriginal or abo. That means no modern tools. So to begin with, we're going to be working some obsidian. This is the original obsidian cobble with some of the cortex here on the back and the nice shiny surface here. And then I've got some deer antlers. I've got a rock that I'm going to use for abrading and a rock that I'll probably use for percussion. The first thing I'm going to do is use this round hammerstone to try to knock some flakes off of this big cobble of obsidian. And what you're looking for is you've got a nice flat surface here, relatively flat, and then if you hit the cortex right around in here with a downward motion, should be able to drive off a pretty good flake. Let's give it a try. All right, now that's a really fat piece, but totally usable, and you see that it's razor sharp. Let me prove this. I'm sure you've all heard how sharp obsidian is, that it's actually sharper than steel, that's sharper than a scalpel. Here's a piece of paper, and let's cut. Okay, you see that? Sharper than a razor. Because it's that sharp, we need to dull it just to be able to work with it. This is not usable for an arrowhead. It certainly would be usable as an implement to try to cut with, but you can dull this either with your hammerstone, or if you have an antler that you kind of dulled off, cut off and dulled. I like this better because it tends to get a little bit more of a grip on the piece. All I'm doing is going around the edges and trying to knock off that sharp edge. At this point, you're left with relatively straight edges, perpendicular, so a 90-degree angle, and I'm going to dull those edges even more with my grinding stone. Okay, now we need to thin this, especially this fat area, what's called the bulb. And to thin that, I'm going to go back to my hammerstone, and if we look at this side with the cortex, I'm going to try to hit down right here into the cortex and drive a flake in, and then I'll flip it over, I'll drive a flake, and these are going to be small flakes just to try to thin that out. I like to hold it against my leg. You could hold it in your hand like this, but if you're going to do that, definitely have a piece of leather. I would even go bigger than this. But since I got leather protecting my leg, I'm going to go ahead and use that. Okay, so that took that little flake right there off, and it's little tiny nibbles that we're going to do to try to thin this piece. Okay, that was a much bigger flake, but you can see it took off a lot of that belly on that bulb. So right here, see how that's going down? Right there, that's a platform. I'm going to try to strike that with the tip of this hammerstone. Okay, it's a lot more difficult with this because it's not really narrow, and so your strike has to be just perfect, but there I got that. And so now what I'm going to do is flip it over and try to hit this to drive some of this fatness off. Okay, that one didn't go in very deep, so I'm going to try to drop my center line. I'll show you what I mean in just a sec. Okay, dropping the center line means what I did was from this side, smashed it down so that the underside was cut away. Now, when we flip it over, you see how that dropped the center line? So now a flake will drive more easily into this bulb, into that belly. And I'm going to grind it first. Grinding does a couple things. It helps your tool get a grip, it helps dull it, and I think it helps strengthen the platforms as well. And I'm actually going to switch back to the glove. Instead of using a piece of leather, I'm using a leather glove so that I can hold it in my hand for maybe a little bit more control. Yeah, so that took off that nice flake, the next one. So that's definitely doing the trick. Antler is better than stone for this particular procedure. Oh, okay. I broke a big piece off, but that's irregularity in the material. So now I'm just going to break that ear off. And we've still got something that can be made into an arrowhead. There. Now again, this isn't going to be the prettiest point you've ever seen in your life, but I can definitely make an arrowhead out of this. That was a nice flake. Nice thinning flake. Look at that. See how much meat we're taking off? It's very difficult to strike that little 1 millimeter that you need to hit. You just have to practice. Okay, that was a corner. That was a corner that I just took off. And now that set me up with another platform right here to come down. There. I know these look chaotic, but they're definitely being done with purpose and deliberation, and it's coming together pretty well, actually. There, that was a nice one. That was a nice one. Took that big flake right there, thinned it out. We're almost ready to go ahead and pressure flake with the tip of an antler. And so now we can start thinking about the shape. So I'm going to start removing some of this. Real rough, starting to look like a triangle. Okay, I just took a break to get a piece of wood. I thought maybe I'd do better if I had a solid surface to give it more pressure. I might try something else too. Let's try putting the bark there, putting this on top. Oh yeah. Yeah, man. So I learn something every time. And you know, nobody's taught me how to do this stuff. I mean, a little bit from books, but like nobody said put a piece of bark on your thigh underneath the leather. Oh yeah. Oh, that's a huge difference. Yeah, I can really run a nice little set of pressure flakes using this. The other thing I'm learning to do is to push with my knee, push with this knee, so that I'm pushing the piece, pushing the antler into the piece. So what I've been doing for the past couple of minutes is just putting the antler against that edge and then pushing it in against my leg and taking off little nibbling bites so that my center line is now centered and to bring it more into this triangular shape. You notice it still isn't super sharp at the tip, so I thought you guys would want to see that. And as far as notches are concerned, they're not going to be narrow, but I can make something so it won't fall off the arrow. So maybe I'll zoom in so you can really appreciate this. See all those little flakes? That's doing the trick. All right, that is a respectably sharp point, wouldn't you say? So now let's look into the notches. Okay, this isn't going to be pretty. I mean, they don't need to be that deep. That's going to stay on an arrow. Let me just work my edge a little bit and I'm almost done. The serrations are really what's going to make the damage when you're hunting. I think I'm going to call this done. Now, I have not done very many points aboriginal style with primitive tools. I use modern tools like copper boppers you've seen in other videos and copper nails. The principles are the same. It's just the tools differ. But as you can see, I went from that one flake, piece of obsidian, using primitive techniques, and in under a half an hour, made a very, very respectable primitive point. Okay, primitive. If this were 10,000 years ago, I don't think that's bad at all. All right, I hope you enjoyed this. Let me know if you have any more requests.